Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Besides the main topic today, which of course is the manhunt of the shooter of Charlie Kirk and the manhunt being underway, we also must acknowledge that today is 9/11, 2025. A full 24 years after this horrific attack on our country occurred. And we, the people that do this show, myself, Phil Grimaldi, Mike Geary, we're all first responders, and we all know numerous people that lost their lives on that day, as well as we don't know the 50,000 people that are suffering from 9/11 ailments, but we acknowledge them. And many more have died from horrific 9/11 diseases like cancers that they've never seen before. And I think it's important that we as NYPD acknowledge it. And we always like to use the Latin term fidelis ad mortem, which stands for faithful until death. Because surely all of us that responded that day had no qualms about risking our lives to save our fellow citizens, our fellow first responders. And we all did it without a second thought. I don't want to just gloat in this. I'd like to introduce the other two members that were also 9/11 first responders, and they can just take a bow. Also from the NYPD, also retired NYPD Sergeant, Professor at Albertus Magnus College, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Bill, good afternoon. Thank you for having me on.
Well, Mike, also we want to acknowledge your service on 9/11. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for your service that day.
You're welcome.
And also, straight out of Brooklyn, retired NYPD detective. Welcome to the show, Detective Phil Grimaldi. Welcome, Phil, and thank you for your service on 9/11.
Thank you, Billy. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate that you mentioned that. And yeah, there are a lot of us suffering with conditions related to the exposure down at Ground Zero. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm going to take you guys back off the screen. And folks, this incident yesterday, of course, is so horrific. Really just can be compared to a political assassination. And to tell you the truth, I thought that the perpetrator would be in custody by now. And I'm not questioning the talent of the law enforcement or the FBI. It doesn't always work out that way. And I guarantee you they're going to get this guy. Guarantee, and probably today. And I'm not one to just act like I know everything, but I just think this is so important. Their phone has to be ringing off the hook with tips. And we know that in other things, and later on, I'll put it up on the screen, they have a picture of who they believe to be the perpetrator. And I would not be surprised if at this very point, the FBI knows by name who this guy is. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off the cuff zone, the police off the cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
You know, folks, I want to just really sort of devour this case because we're too used to this. We're too used to shooters. Like, look, 2 assassination attempts against the president of the United States, Donald Trump. Shootings on college campuses, active shooters all the time. It's almost like we've become numb to this. We've become used to this. So I want to get right into the investigation and right here. The picture you see up on the screen, it's not the greatest picture on earth, but that is who they believe to be the perpetrator. Here's maybe a better picture right there. Good enough picture that someone that knows him can absolutely call the FBI and say that's so-and-so. Absolutely. It's a good enough picture to say that. What are the chances that he's from the area? Probably very good, right? Could he have flown in from someone else? Yes. We're also hearing things about, he's a professional sniper. Well, he's a damn good shot. We know that he shot from 200 yards away and hit poor Charlie Kirk right in the neck. So yes, he's proficient with firearms. What that could mean, he was in the service. That could just mean he's an avid hunter. That could mean he's a firearms buff. Does not mean he's a professional assassin. He certainly looks like he has military experience, or he may have been a sniper at one point. That shot was nothing to not marvel at, even though the evil deed that it did. So right now, what we are all looking at, of course, is the manhunt being underway. I'm going to bring in Mike Geary. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me
And
on.
of course, bring in retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi. I think the most important thing right now, guys, is some of the things we know, and I'll go to you first, Phil. Some of the evidence that they've recovered. You want to talk about that, Phil?
Sure. They've recovered a ton of evidence. They recovered the firearm that was used. They've recovered possibly rounds, a towel, a screwdriver. They say that there was a shoe imprint, that there was a palm print, that there was, I think they said, a forearm imprint. So there's enough there to tie whoever this perpetrator is to the location. Okay, so we have that. I think that, Bill, I think you're right on track. The FBI probably already has this person identified. I think that image that you showed, he's wearing what looks like some type of an American flag on his shirt. So that way he would blend in with the crowd. Patriotic Americans went to that location to hear Charlie Kirk speak. So I think that perhaps he had some type of an overgarment and then he took it off, or vice versa. Maybe he put it on afterwards, whatever it was. I'm very confident that this person is going to be brought to justice. He's going to be identified. And I feel very confident, like you, Bill, that he probably already has been identified. I mean, there's video of him entering into the location, going into the stairway, exiting, going into the woods where the gun was found. So they're going to just leapfrog all the different video, because there's video cameras everywhere, as we know, in 2025. I don't think it's going to be a big, long, drawn-out investigation to try and locate and arrest this perpetrator.
Absolutely. Let me play this from NBC News, and you'll get a little overview of what's going on.
A gut-wrenching video to watch, and it sounds like the latest information we have actually hinges on surveillance video. What have investigators learned from it?
Yeah, I think the big key part of this is the weapon that was recovered. As you mentioned, this high-powered bolt-action rifle found in a wooded area just off campus. It helps because it sort of pieces and bridges the timeline together that investigators appear to be putting together, placing the suspected shooter at about 11:52 on campus. The person of interest then goes through the staircase up to the roof, fires that single, fatal, tragic shot, hops off of the roof, runs through campus, and then into a nearby neighborhood where police have been canvassing, obviously looking to talk to witnesses and looking to gather as much video as possible. And in the course of gathering that video, have stumbled upon or processed this image, which they've now put out to the public, appearing to show a person wearing a hoodie with an emblem on it, baseball cap, jeans, tennis shoes, a person that they believe may be the person of interest in this shooting, a person that they described as college age, a person that could blend into the crowd very well as everybody was leaving. And in fact, the Utah Police Department speaking to that earlier this morning. I want to play for you how they describe the suspected shooter. Listen to this.
Suspect blended in well with a college institution. We're not releasing many details right now, and we will soon. But right now we're not. But that individual appears to be of college age.
The FBI, Utah Public Safety, not shy in saying that a huge part of their investigation and now this ensuing manhunt relies on the public's help. That's obviously why they put the picture out on X, hoping to get more information from the public. Anybody that knows anything, anybody that has more pictures or video, key and crucial to the, obviously, investigation that's ongoing. Meanwhile, this manhunt continues. Campus shut down until next week. We thank you.
So there's a pretty good overview. And then to us in law enforcement, that means a lot. Okay, they recovered the rifle, a bolt-action rifle, high-powered bolt-action. That they didn't name the caliber or what type of weapon it was, but something like a sniper's rifle or a hunting rifle that was capable of being accurate from a long distance. The other thing was they've recovered a towel. There could be DNA on that towel, sweat just from the perpetrator's hands. Supposedly a forearm print and possibly a palm print on the firearm. All those things are amazingly important. They've got the firearm, they got the serial number. What's the history of this firearm? Where was it purchased? Who owned it? How many owners have there been? Does anyone who owned this gun previously recognize this photo right here? Could that be someone that bought the gun from you? So many answers will come from the evidence that they picked out. And of course, retracing the steps of the alleged shooter onto the campus, showing up earlier, and of course, to the point where the shot rang out. And when he left the campus, they have him going into a nearby neighborhood. Now it's painstaking. It's gumshoe work. It's wear out your shoes, put holes in your shoes, talk to people. You got to find ring cameras all over the place. And in honor of 9/11, there was one expression that everyone said, and that's if you see something, say something. That goes quadruple, triple, 10 times for this case because people have cell phones. The Boston Marathon shooters, that was solved by video from people's cell phones. That could also happen in this case, although I believe there's a good potential he's already identified. It has not been released. It's unusual for the FBI to release photos this early, and I applaud them for doing so. And I believe they've learned something from the Boston Marathon case when they did not put the pictures out of the Tsarnaev brothers, who were the shooters and the bombers more accurately, but they also shot a cop and shot many cops. So it's very important to get the community involved. And if you see something, say something. Mike, your thoughts of the evidence and the manhunt?
Well, the what we can see from how he got in and got out, it appears that this is probably a lone wolf. I would imagine he may be radicalized somehow online, but this doesn't look like he was a shooter representing some sort of criminal organization or political organization. He would have had, I would think, more help or been a little bit more sophisticated. He's a hunter. Obviously, he's got familiarity with firearms out west there in Utah, and he's probably a fairly local person. I'd imagine he is a Utah person. If you do a shooting and you're leaving, you want to get out of that area as soon as you possibly can. It doesn't appear that he took a car with him, and I don't think he'd be dumb enough to drive a car into the parking lot, leave it, and then run on foot. So I imagine he walked onto campus and he walked off, and he ran off. But he's going to run. When you're that high on adrenaline, you're going to run somewhere where you're familiar with, and you're not going to run into a neighborhood where you don't know the streets, you don't know where you are, what direction you're going in. I think he ran into a neighborhood he's fairly comfortable with. Maybe he knows the neighborhood, maybe he lives there, maybe he has friends there, but he ran into a neighborhood he knows. And so that's good. That gives the police just a little bit of information on possible suspects, because if you go around, you look at ring cameras and you got that picture, he may be someone who's been in that neighborhood for a while. And so if you come up with a first name, that's a good start. As you said, that rifle's got a serial number. I'm sure the ATF has the record of that rifle from the day it was manufactured and first sold. He may not have gotten that somewhere along the line in a private purchase where there's no official record of it, but there somewhere along the line there is that first purchase, and it was probably made from a store and complying with ATF regulations, and so they filled out the ATF form and sold it to somebody. So that's fantastic. I believe that with you and Phil, as you say, they've got DNA that could also help, even if he's not a suspect that has DNA uploaded into CODIS. The fact is, through investigative genetic genealogy, they may be able to figure out, who this person might be. So I think the police they've let us know they've got a lot of information, but obviously the FBI, they're very, very closed mouth. They have even a lot more than they've let on so far.
When we talk about some of the evidence recovered here, what we're talking about, of course, the rifle. So important. They recovered the rifle, a towel that apparently was around or somewhere wrapped around the rifle. That could, again, have DNA from the suspect in regards to possibly sweat from his hands. Ammo, which says to me the magazine was still in the gun. There was several rounds, as far as I know, inside the gun. And on these rounds, there was writing. So there's some cryptic messages which the FBI is not putting out there right now. So that's indicative of sort of a political hit. He, just like if you guys followed the case of Luigi Mangione, same thing on the shell casings, on the casing, the side of the projectiles was writing, expressions. And in this case too. And that almost leads me to believe that the perpetrator wants somehow to get caught. The prints, are there fingerprints on the gun? Is there a palm print on the gun? His digital footprint once we find this guy, his cell phone, his computer, all of those things, of course. The picture of him, which we see right up on the screen right now. And of course, tips. People calling in. Once this picture gets out there, I bet you their phone is ringing off the hook with tips. Palm print, of course, forearm print, and the gun trace. Very important to get this gun trace, to find out the history of this rifle. And that may very well lead right to the perpetrator. And Mike, you said earlier, I think it's a little too early right away to say he acted alone.
Okay.
Even if he did the shooting alone, he could have had help. He could have help right now getting out of the country, trying to escape. So we can't really say prematurely that he acted alone. That it's a potentially the way he did it. And to me, I was amazed also in these cases. He only fired one shot. That says something to me also, that he's such a proficient shooter. He knows that he couldn't miss. And I think that's very concerning too, which shows who this guy may be. Could he be a former armed forces, trained heavily in firearms? Or could he just be a farm boy that hunts and is a great shot? Phil, your thoughts?
He definitely had familiarity with the location as well as the firearm. Now, with that being said about the location, he didn't waltz onto that campus and get onto that roof without doing a reconnaissance. I'm sure he was at that location before. What does that mean? That means that perhaps they can download the video in the last 30 days or so of that location, whatever video cameras there are, and apply a facial recognition application to it to see if they can match up the photos and video that they have with someone that was on the campus previously. I am certain that he didn't just waltz onto that campus and get to that location, to that staircase, get up onto that roof, onto that perch, which, by the way, was probably the perfect perch for an assassin to attack a person that was in the location where Charlie Kirk was. Now, with regard to the rifle and the proficiency of the shooter, if he has a scope on that gun, you don't have to be so much of a proficient shooter. A scope increases the chances of hitting your target greatly. If it was just the sights that are on the gun and it's a bolt action gun, then I would say, yes, this guy was very proficient in shooting from 200 yards away without a scope to be able to hit the target that he did. With the scope, it does make it a lot easier. That still doesn't mean that he wasn't proficient in shooting. I'm just trying to make a point that with that rifle, a bolt action rifle from that distance, he probably did have a scope on it. We don't know for sure, but that would definitely aid in being accurate on your target.
This is Fox News. This is the special agent in charge of the FBI.
And how far do you think he may have gone in this time?
So I can't comment specifically on his face or any details such as that, as it's continuing to be a part of the investigation. And again, we'll release that shortly. However, we're doing everything we can to find him, and we're not sure how far he has gone yet, but we will do our best.
But you have a clear image of his face?
We have images of the suspect.
Did you trace the weapon's owner?
That you've been able to recover, do you believe you know who this person is, the person that you're looking for?
Again, as part of the investigation, we're not releasing any details such as that right now.
Fingerprints or DNA?
We are exhausting all of our resources to be able to collect those, but that's, again, part of the investigation.
Have you been able to trace back the owner of the gun?
Excuse me?
You said you found the weapon. Have you been able to trace back the owner of that weapon or who purchased it?
We are working on that, but again, part of the investigation that I can't release. Not at all. We've got complete and total support from everyone from the director on down, and it's been an incredible supportive environment so far. All I can say is that we're working the investigation the best we have with the environment we're given. So,
Those are all the questions for right now. Please, everybody.
So the FBI is a little bit close
So
now.
the headline came at the end there, Dana. We have images of the suspect. That after they gave us a number of details that we were not privy to prior. So they say a number of individuals questioned, they've been released, they asked for privacy for them. At 11:52 a.m. Utah time, they tracked the suspect to that building. They later, after the shooting, tracked him jumping off the building, fleeing into a neighborhood. And they're asking neighbors in that area if they have doorbell cameras to turn over anything that may produce an image. What they didn't say is whether or not he ran there on foot or drove a car. But later they said, we do have good video of this individual. We are confident in our abilities. And with regard to that, they say they have footwear prints. So perhaps he was on foot, and also palm prints. And they asked for any video and images tipped to the website there. This is a bolt action rifle. It is manually operated. It is extremely accurate. And according to a lot of gun experts, it has fewer moving parts, which would give the killer an opportunity to take a more accurate shot. And based on the graphic images that the world saw yesterday afternoon, that shot was a kill shot. It took one, and Charlie Kirk barely had a chance of survival.
You know, I just wanted to mention something here, and I don't know why. Maybe I'm slow. It just occurred to me. This is a bolt-action rifle, and unless he manually ejected the spent shell would still be in the gun.
That
Correct?
makes sense, Billy.
Is that's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, a bolt action, what it is you fire a shot. In order to chamber another round, you have to lift, pull it back. Another round goes into place. The round ejects that you just, the spent shell ejects, and then you rack it back in, and that puts another round into the chamber to be fired. So it sounds like he didn't re-rack. It sounds like when they found the gun, probably the shell casing that was fired at Charlie Kirk was still in the gun. Unknown for sure, but that's what it does sound like.
Another thing that they did find on the scene that I didn't mention, they found a screwdriver, which is indicative that perhaps he was was going to take the gun apart so that it would fit in some kind of holder, some kind of case, some kind of container. But you got to realize he's filled with adrenaline. He wants to get the hell away. So he did dump the gun. However, they recovered a gold standard of evidence. Mike.
Yeah, if you look at the images that they have, the two images that were released, if you look very closely, it looks like he has a small backpack, hanging low on his back. So that could be indicative of that rifle, that brand rifle may what they call be a takedown rifle, where it's a bolt action, and then you turn and you undo the stock where the shoulder is, where you hold your forearm, and then where the barrel is. So it may be one of those kinds of weapons. And there's not too many manufacturers that make that. But when you do buy it, it does come with a specific bag that you would use to carry it. So that's probably what he was thinking, because you don't want to leave that behind. But in the moment, with all that adrenaline pumping, he probably saw through the scope that he hit Charles Kirk, and then he just quickly got out of there. But he realized, I don't have time to break this thing down, throw it there. And so he left it because he doesn't want to be seen with that sort of thing, And so he went out as quickly as he could. Luckily, they do have some ammunition. They do have the screwdriver. There, as you say, there may be DNA, palm print, fingerprints on that. You got the footwear imprint. That's always good. If you catch the guy later on, he's got that sort of pair of shoe. So they do have some really great information. The bolt action rifle is much more accurate at long distances than a semi-automatic rifle because of the way the bullet is chambered with the bolt. So it's he chose his rifle. Unfortunately, he chose his rifle really well. It was the most accurate rifle he could pick, and he, one shot, and Mr. Kirk didn't stand a chance. But he left a lot of information behind. So that's the one good thing, is that the police have a good, idea of who they're dealing with.
Phil, let's paint the picture of the investigative site. And what we would talk about is the command and control center. All investigators have to talk to each other. They have to be in a centralized location, and you need something called bosses. You absolutely need someone directing this investigation. Great investigators will go out into the field, and each one will have their own assignment. A FBI agent or a detective will keep a log and will keep an assignment record of every single investigator that goes out into the field, what their assignment is, and once they return, what was the results of their investigative assignment? What happened? What did they find out? Did they find out nothing? Accompanied with that assignment is something we would call a complaint follow-up. There will be a complete report, so you can match up the assignment from the log given to the specific investigator and then typed up on a report. And the FBI calls it something different. Detectives in New York City, we used to call it a DD5, a complaint
302,
follow-up.
Billy. FBI calls it a 302.
So the FBI calls it a 302. But Phil, I'd just like to remind you, the police agency covering this is the law enforcement agency of record. The FBI is in it on assistance. They don't normally take homicide cases. They help, they assist, but it's not their case in name. So when we look at this investigation, there is so many moving parts, folks. And like everyone will say, oh, his fingerprints, his DNA. First of all, if you watch this show or watch true crime, you know if they can collect DNA, the first place it goes to is the FBI. And they compare it to the CODIS database, the Combined DNA Index System, which has two categories of DNA, forensic DNA and perpetrator DNA. If this individual who you see up on the screen has never been arrested before, then his DNA will not be in the CODIS database unless there's some forensic DNA that has yet to be identified. So we must realize that. The same thing with fingerprints. Unless this individual has been fingerprinted, it doesn't necessarily have to be criminal fingerprints. It could be innocuous fingerprints, like, getting a license for something, being a stockbroker, or any kind of field where your fingerprints are taken. So they may not have all of those things. Same thing. What technology is everyone raving about in this day and age? Facial recognition, right? And it's not 1,000% up to speed, but his face is being looked at and compared to thousands of images in the facial recognition database that may help to get this person identified. And then, of course, what we're relying on is the old, if you see something, say something, tips from the public. Someone knows this guy. I believe that the phones are ringing off the hook with tips. And I believe at this point, it doesn't matter if this is a hunch. I believe he's identified. Don't take that to the bank. Say Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff said it. I firmly believe he's identified. And the FBI is famous for holding back information for a long time. Lou Lemoracco, thank you so much for the $20 super sticker. Very much appreciated. And by the way, Lou, very good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Nice to have you on board again, watching the Police Off the Cuff podcast. Carol Grayston, thank you for the £5 super sticker. Please like and subscribe, guys. It's very much appreciated and free. Carol, thank you so much. Carol's our main moderator here. Thank you. Terry K, thank you for the $10 super sticker. Thank you, guys. You're the best. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. 100%. I'm going to go back quickly to Fox.
I think it was a good idea for them to give this update this morning at the time that they did. Remember, so it's 9:27 a.m. Eastern time. It's 2 hours behind in Utah, and that's Mountain Time, 7:27 a.m. And I think if you see what they were able to do, they provided us the information that they could.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reporters were asking very good questions, and the investigators are saying, we cannot answer those right now because we're in the middle of the investigation. And one of those questions was, since you recovered the weapon, have you been able to trace back the owner of that weapon?
Yeah.
And the investigator very clearly said, not able to talk about that right now. So that's obviously either in question or they know it.
You know something, that's not totally accurate. You know something, the gun could be around for 30 or 40 years. There could have been 4 or 5 owners, you know, there could have been numerous owners. Because one person bought this gun 20, 30, and I'm not saying maybe it's a brand new gun, but that doesn't totally identify the owner of the gun. As I said, it could have passed hands numerous times. Phil,
it could be stolen too, Billy. It could be a stolen gun.
Could
be stolen out of someone's house, you know. So there's so many possibilities.
It could be a defaced firearm.
Absolutely.
A firearm that they purposely ripped the serial number off so that it wouldn't be identified. So let's get back to Fox and we'll discuss this.
They will need the bullet that killed Charlie Kirk for more evidence too. Robin Dreeke, retired FBI special agent, Trey Gowdy, host of Sunday Night in America, and Trey is a prosecutor and Robin as an investigator with the FBI. Tell us what you think about what we're just heard there in Orem, Utah.
Yeah, what we're hearing is a lot of good data.
To make an arrest.
I'm sorry, Robin, go ahead. You were saying?
Yeah, it's a lot of good data that we're getting out of this. And at the early onset, people were thinking this was a professional hit, and professional had a different connotation to me. I thought it was a skilled shot, but professionals don't do this. And so luckily, he's made a lot of missteps. And as indicated in his press conference, he left a data trail of evidence that they're able to zero in on him pretty quickly, I think.
What do you say? Professionals don't do this. Take that further. What do you mean?
Yeah, so professionals, if this individual was actually truly trying to just kill Charlie Kirk, this is not the way to do it, because this is in a public venue, leaving a lot of footprints on the ground, leaving a weapon in the woods, not having a clear escape plan, which people thought he did. And so that's not a professional level like at the higher levels that you're kind of thinking like in the movies. This is a skilled shot, but an unskilled individual at being.
You know, I get a little crazy over this. You know, like I wish the FBI would define what a professional hitman is. And the only person I could think that you would say would be a professional assassin, a professional killer, would be someone from the armed forces. You know, someone that did numerous years in the armed forces. But to say that this shooter was a professional, no, he's not. He's absolutely not. Is he a damn good shot? Yeah, but you know, this was mentioned also during the shooting of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare. They said the shooter's an assassin, a professional, and he wasn't. He was a college kid, you know, and it appears to be that this guy is a college kid too, and obsessed, perhaps, proficiency with firearms, no doubt. Did he plan this? 1,000% he planned it. He got away, didn't he? I was expecting there to be an arrest almost immediately, and there is not. Mike.
Yeah, Bill. You know, as I guess what he's trying to allude to is the fact that if this was a professional assassin, if you wanted to kill Mr. Kirk, you would have taken him out someplace where it was dark, someplace where it was quiet. You wouldn't do it in an arena kind of setting where there's thousands of people. There's too many people that may have seen you, too much video, too much information can be gathered. Maybe he had some help, you know, someone in the university led him into that area, into the building. We don't know. But yeah, he's not a professional hitman, but he has proficiency, of course, with that rifle. So that's helpful for law enforcement because he's probably not done this before. Somebody else, more professional, would have tried to kill Mr. Kirk in a much quieter, darker setting, far away from prying eyes. But so that's good for law enforcement.
But you know something, Mike? I think part of this assassination was they did want to make a political statement. They did want to do it out in the open. They did want the maximum number of people to witness this, to view this. Maybe. So those are questions and those are answers we'll get when this guy is caught. But again, when I hear the term, oh, he's a professional, that a professional assassin would have to be from the military, someone from the military, or from, you know, a spy agency or something. That would be a professional hit person. And usually if it's someone from a spy agency, they had military background also. Phil.
Yeah, Billy, I think you're hitting the nail right on the head with regard to the military background, because when they're talking about a professional, they're talking about a hitman from the mob. A lot of them came out of the military, or a sniper from the military. So I get that. I don't think that falls into this category. This is someone that was intent on making a political statement based on the fact that we know that there was some inscriptions on the rounds and on the gun. They did some type of a recon. They put some effort into this, just as Luigi Mangione did. I'm glad we brought up that case, because there are a lot of parallels here. And Luigi Mangione was by no means a professional hitman. However, he put some thought, effort, and he put some knowledge into the location of the subject that he wanted to kill. Same thing here. The person did their homework. They did some recon. I will almost guarantee they were on that campus at a time before this thing took place. The one thing I wanted to point out that I'm not happy with the FBI, I know they're pretty tight-lipped. They didn't come out with the photos right away. They came out with them today. Okay, I'm okay with that. They should have never divulged that there was a footprint, because now if the perpetrator knows that, he may discard these shoes that he was wearing, and we know there could be comparisons to a particular footprint with the wear pattern on the shoe if it's recovered. I don't like that they gave out that information. The stuff about the gun being recovered and the palm print, okay, I'm okay with all of that, because that's not going to change anything. I think they should have held back on that. And with regard to the staircase getting up to the roof, a lot of these buildings, they have an alarm on the door. I don't know if there was an alarm on that specific door. If there was, did someone go up there to check it out? I mean, these are the things we're going to look at to try and glean information to prevent stuff like this in the future.
You know, Phil, I agree with you, but I don't think the FBI was the ones that released about the shoe.
Whoever it was, I don't agree with.
Smells of local law enforcement or some politician hearing about it and spitting it out there like an idiot. You're right. Stupid to put that information out there, because now the perpetrator can just get rid of those shoes, so they'll never find them. So that is one of the reasons why we keep this stuff not just close to the vest, but quiet. You keep it quiet because there's always a part two to this, the arrest and apprehension, and part two is the prosecution. And if you lose evidence, that hurts. That hurts the prosecution. Let me go back to Fox. We'll play the rest of this.
An assassin.
Trey Gowdy, you listened to that press conference as well, and you've heard Robin's thoughts. As somebody who used to prosecute crimes after the investigation, what other questions would you have right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the police did the right thing. They give no information to jeopardize the ultimate goal, which is a conviction. I mean, you have to make the arrest, but the ultimate goal is for this person to be convicted. So you got to be careful what you release. What the police essentially want is give us all the video you may have. Give us any tip that you may have. I think images of the suspect are not the same as images of the face of the suspect. And prints are only good if you have someone to compare them or match them with. I think they are going to apprehend the killer, but the goal, again, Dana, is to get a conviction. It is not simply to generate a headline or have a good press conference. This ends in front of a jury or with a guilty plea. The only other thing I would add, Dana, is as painful as it is, people have to watch the video from yesterday. And while they're watching it, and they're going to want to turn their heads away, but you need to imagine this as a husband and a father and a friend, not someone politically that you may happen to disagree with. This video is so jarring to watch. The problem is it really happened. And it happened in the greatest country in the world. And so we got to have a conversation about how much of this we're willing to put up with. So watch what happened to him. He is killed in an instant from 200 yards. For what reason? Because you happen to disagree with his political beliefs? Mm-hmm. Make yourself watch it. And realize this is a husband and a father, not just some political person with whom you may happen to disagree.
Trey, stand by one moment. Robin, I'm going to get your reaction on two things that we just heard here. Let's play the soundbite of the suspect's movements first. Let's listen here.
We were able to track the movements of the shooter. Starting at 11:52 a.m., the subject arrived on campus, shortly away from campus. We had tracked his movements onto the campus, through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location. After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled off of the campus and into a neighborhood.
Okay, Robin, go ahead. Take us through this now. You would assume that if you had a phone, which I'm not quite sure they did, that you would be able to do that quite easily. But it sounds to me like there were cameras that were able to track him. What do you take from it, Robin?
Yeah, I think what they did was they were able to kind of zero in right away on where the shooter came from, where the bullet came from, because they released that right away. So they're able to get cameras on him in that location because campuses have a lot of cameras. Plus, you had 3,000 people with cell phones. And so from that, they're able to backtrack the timeline to actually follow, because once they have an image of an individual, you now have a body language demeanor that he's giving off of a baseline of what you're looking for in that crowd, especially since he stood out with what he was wearing, all black. And so they're just backing up that timeline, and then they're advancing that timeline so they can track those movements. And so when they say they don't have an image of the face, they don't really need that image of the face yet, because they have the body language of the individual. It's going to be very telling over time.
Okay, now you said the video. Okay, that's the next soundbite. We'll let you analyze this too. Watch here from the FBI.
Sure. We do have good video footage of this individual. We are not going to release that at this time. We are working through some technologies and some ways to identify this individual. If we are unsuccessful, we will reach out to you as the media, and we will push that publicly to help us identify them. But we are confident in our abilities right now, and we would like to move forward in a manner that keeps everyone safe and moves this process appropriately.
Hey, Rob, I'm reading between the lines here. I don't believe they've got a name. Is that accurate, do you believe?
I believe that's probably accurate right now, but I think they're going to get that pretty rapidly.
I disagree with them. I think they know who this guy is. I really do, and it doesn't matter because we're all just predicting. I want to mention something that may infuriate a lot of people. What the hell was going on with the security at this location? Charlie Kirk is a high-risk speaker. In essence, wherever he goes, his life is threatened. And I believe it was reported that he had an 8-person security detail of his own. And then very little resources were provided by the college, by the local
six
police.
officers, Billy.
Six
They're saying
officers.
6 officers.
That's ridiculous. 6 officers for, it was reported 6,000 people, 8,000 people, whatever it was. That's not enough people. How didn't we learn anything from Butler, Pennsylvania? How did he get on the roof? There's no roof coverage. And as I said, Charlie Kirk was a high risk speaker, especially on college campuses. He gets threats all the time. What the hell were they thinking? Mike.
Bill, it's elementary. You cover the ruse. You have one officer, like say Charlie Kirk had 8 people or 6 people. There's probably, and that's his own contingent. Then you have the local police. Phil, it's like 6 or 8 people. That's all. And then maybe the campus police, maybe they had 6. That's 24. That's not bad. But you got to have one person with binoculars on the roof of each of the roofs. And so, there's maybe 4 or 5 right there. And then you have undercover people walking through the crowds in the back, and you start and you walk towards the front and you go back. You start looking around, observing people. But to not have anybody, no law enforcement whatsoever, either by his bodyguards, the local PD, or the university police, not to have anybody on the roofs is frustrating, and it's really questionable. We knew that in Butler, Pennsylvania, people were asking the same thing. That's an elementary thing to securing. You got to secure the high ground to be able to look down and see what's going on. He gets threats. He's been getting threats for years, and he gets them continuously. That's why he does have an 8-man squad to help him and with security. And he was wearing what looks like a Kevlar vest underneath his shirt. But you got to secure the roofs, and that is something that just I guess they never gave it a thought. Maybe his team thought the local police would cover it, or that the university police would cover it, because that's where I would put them, because they know the campus better than anybody. But that's an elementary thing that could have potentially saved Mr. Kirk's life.
Pauline Buckles from the chat. Local law enforcement was short-staffed. Pauline, thank you for addressing that. But I don't give a shit that they were short-staffed. Get staff. You know what I mean? Bring staff in from the college. The universities are loaded with money these days. Bring in college security staff if you have to, right? Bring in state police. He is a high-risk asset. He's been threatened just like Ben Shapiro. Same thing. Every time they go on college campuses, students try to stop them from even speaking. That's not America. Whether you are progressive, whether you're conservative, you should be allowed to speak on college campuses and without getting your life threatened and people trying to physically stop you from speaking. This is disgusting, right? And then the fact that the threats against him, I don't know, where does the buck stop? Who ultimately was in charge of this security? There's only one thing to do with that person. Then you guys have the answer? He gets fired. Get rid of him. Yeah. Are you kidding me? This is a zero-sum game. A guy just lost his life because the security was horrific. Horrific.
Billy, I have to make a comment about that. I would certainly almost guarantee that his security team consists of either retired military or retired law enforcement. I am certain that they must have pointed out to someone related to the college or the local police that those roofs should be checked. I mean, that's the first vulnerability that comes to mind. Me working in the intelligence division and working presidential details and things of that nature, that's the first thing you're going to think of is a perch, a rooftop where someone can lay prone and fire a shot at a principal, and that actually aids in making the shot accurate, because if it's supported, if the rifle is supported by laying prone on the ground from a roof, that's the ideal situation that you would want as an assassin. So, I mean, and we do have video of him moving about on the roof, the same thing as what occurred in the shooting last year of President Trump. So, yeah, somebody dropped the ball there. And I agree with you, Billy. He is definitely a high threat individual, a high value target, so to speak. And someone dropped the ball here. And I don't want to point fingers, but this is really like basic, dignitary protection stuff.
Bill, it was security. It's security 101, but so was the protection of the president of the United States, and they screwed up. So, and we can never lay the blame on a security force that's civilian. They're not in charge. Uniformed officers are in charge. Whoever the police agency is that is in charge of that area, they are in charge of the security there, and they coordinate with the college campus security. I don't know if the college campus security here are sworn police officers, sworn law enforcement, or if they're civilian employees. But this security, you could be a square badge at McDonald's. This security is totally inaccurate. It's inadequate. And again, for a high valued target like Charlie Kirk, whose life is threatened all the time. Folks, we're going to go to a quick commercial. The police off the cuff sponsor, FanDuel. FanDuel is the new sponsor for the Police Off the Cuff podcast. FanDuel. Football season's finally here. Have you checked out the latest odds, futures, and win totals on FanDuel Sportsbook? Think the Bills are headed to the Super Bowl? You can lock in your bets today, whatever your game. FanDuel Sportsbook delivers the latest lines, futures, and specials so you can join in on all of the action. I'm eyeing college football. Who's your pick for the Heisman? Plus, I'm loading up on parlays and player props like Saquon Barkley breaking his own single-season rushing record. With the Major League Baseball postseason right around the corner, FanDuel has you covered with player specials and unique props. Whatever your game, FanDuel Sportsbook delivers the latest lines, futures, and specials so you can join in on the action. FanDuel, the new sponsor of the Police Off the Cuff podcast. We're thrilled to have them.
And CNN senior justice correspondent Evan Perez was monitoring this investigation for us. Nick, let me start with you. What's the latest out there in Utah that we have learned about this killing?
Well, Wolf, we have just heard from officials that they had what they describe as breakthroughs during the night. This is coming from the special agent in charge from the FBI Salt Lake field office and from local officials here in Utah. So here is what we know. They are calling the suspect he, him. They're saying that this is a male, college age, who blended in well on campus. They say that they do now have, which they didn't yesterday, they do now have a good image of that suspect. And they are right now using technology to try and identify the person from that or those images. If they fail with that technology, they say they will release these images through the media to the public. The FBI says they've had about 130 tips, Wolf, and they are asking for more. Any eyewitness accounts, any images, still or video, they want them.
You know, just to mention one thing, the FBI is very slow usually to release any evidence, any pictures. Someone gave them a boot to the butt and said, get that picture out there. Because if we haven't learned anything from the Boston Marathon bombing, then we will never learn anything again. So I'm glad that the FBI put these photos out, because you're much better off with millions of eyes seeing and saying something than just the eyes of law enforcement. And so important, and I'm glad the FBI is coming around to stop everything as a damn secret. That's not how you solve cases. Also, if they don't put this out there and they have this guy and everyone sees him and there's millions of eyes looking for him, what's the chances he'll do this again? Well, not that good, because we're going to catch him and he's going to go try to go underground so he's not seen. But it's important to use all of the resources of the community. That's a big word these days. And all the extra eyes out there to identify this potential shooter.
Now, we also got a little bit of a timeline. They say that they have now tracked the suspect's movements on campus. He arrived on campus 11:52. As I said, blended in with the college crowd is what they say this person looks like. Went up a stairwell, onto the roof, after the incident, jumped off the building. Unclear how that happened, but jumped off the building and then fled off campus through a residential neighborhood. So during the night, investigators were speaking to people in that neighborhood, looking for eyewitness accounts, looking for video from doorbell cameras, etc. They also, in a wooded area, have recovered what they believe is the weapon that was used to kill Charlie Kirk. They describe it as a high-powered bolt-action rifle, and right now they say they are working on trying to trace the ownership of that weapon. Now, they say that the suspect is not still in that wooded area. They have swept and secured that area, but they say they do not know how far he has gone. And of course, with every hour, that is more time for this suspect to get further, possibly away from the scene of the crime. Now, they do stress, though, that they do not believe that the public here is in danger. They say that this was a targeted incident, so they are not concerned right now for the safety of the public. They say that they also have a foot imprint and the imprint left by a palm and a forearm. That is what they're working with. The FBI say they are determined to find this suspect and also find out why he did it. Now, there are still some unanswered questions. Was there a vehicle involved? Was the rifle on campus already, or was the suspect blending in with a long gun? Unclear how that would happen. We also heard that Charlie Kirk's body will be taken home to Arizona today. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much. I want to go to Evan Perez now, who has some new reporting.
Well, yeah, so Nick was just describing some of the scene there and what was recovered by investigators.
All right, you know, they're just repeating what we've already told you guys. The investigation is in full swing. And as I said, I believe he's identified. That hasn't been released. And hopefully when he is identified, they'll get the real picture of him and everything about him out there across the media, all across this country, because that's how you catch bad guys like this. You know, some of you folks in the chat were saying that it's been reported that Charlie Kirk was in fact wearing a vest, and that the round hit the vest and careened off the vest and then hit him in the neck. That, you know, is very possible. I don't have specific information from law enforcement that is true, but that's even more disturbing, which shows even more proficiency with a weapon if the shooter actually hit him center mass, which is how most shooters in this world are trained. Phil?
Yeah, Billy, like you said, center mass is the way we're trained to shoot, because if you want to stop an individual, center mass is where all the organs are, and blood loss is what will stop a person. Through law enforcement channels, it has been, I heard this twice yesterday, that he was wearing a bulletproof vest in the front. And if you look closely at the video, you do see his whole shirt lifts up when the shot is fired, perhaps the bullet impacting the vest, which caused his shirt to rise up. And it's also, there are also reports that the bullet did hit the vest. However, it ricocheted into his neck, causing the fatal injury. So he's under a tent of some sort. The perpetrator is on a roof, which is high. So perhaps the trajectory where he was looking from gives him the exact, like you said, center mass target that he aimed at. Unfortunately, the bulletproof vest didn't protect his life, and we know what the result was.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so much more to this investigation. The fact that Charlie Kirk was wearing a bulletproof vest lets us know that he was aware of the threats that he faced. And he still went out there and spoke in front of thousands of people. You know, to me, not mentioning what Charlie Kirk's politics are, he seemed like an everyday, nice, all-American guy, you know, just a nice person, you know. And many may have disagreed with his message, but in this country, in this world, there's no room for violence like that, especially when it has something to do with a political opinion. Oh, you don't like that person's opinion? Kill him. Luigi Mangione doesn't like the head of United Healthcare, doesn't like that he doesn't pay for all of the claims that are put in. Kill him. No, that's not okay. And neither is this. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, I'm a history buff, and it takes me back to 1968 when you have Robert Kennedy killed and you had Martin Luther King Jr. killed within like 2 months of each other. This is horrible, and we're better than this, because right now, you know, this is third world nonsensical violence that doesn't get us anywhere in the long run. It's terrible. It doesn't help any side, whomever this person is. If they're acting on behalf of a movement, political movement or anything, it doesn't help. It doesn't stop whatever Charlie Kirk's politics are. He was a very popular guy. It's just cold-blooded murder, and this is what this is. This is now a manhunt for a cold-blooded murderer, like the Luigi Mangione cold-blooded murder. It was a manhunt, and they got him in Pennsylvania. That's all this is. He deserves what the killer deserves, whatever they get, and hopefully he'll be caught real soon.
Absolutely. From the chat, Stanley Snow Monkey 318. People need to let, I'm sure you mean investigators, not investors, do their spade work. Seems that other people are just doing spitballing and seeing what sticks to the wall. Stanley Snow Monkey 318. Guess how cases are solved?
Spitballing.
Through detectives spitballing with each other. And I liked, Phil used to use that word. I used to call it hypothesizing and theorizing. And that's how good investigators question each other. And that's how you come up with answers. So thank you. I'm sure that's not what you meant. You were thinking it's negative, but it's positive that investigators spitball with each other. And they ask continuously, what if? What if this? What if that? And that's how you get to the bottom. And you have to think outside the box, not in the box, because everyone could think inside the box. Think outside the box. Look, the trail of this guy, they have him coming on campus. They have his movements. they now have video of him, which they should get out there immediately. I don't know what they're holding on to. There's a still of him, all right? There's his ugly face with the sunglasses, all right? So let's get that out there. Let's get the public to help us. And again, these photos are out there, but how about if you have better video, let's enhance it and let's get it on the TV. Let's get it on television so not thousands of people can see it, millions of people can see it, and then the people that see it connect to their cell phone and they start calling. If you see something, say something. Call into that tips line. Tell them that you saw this guy, if you did. You know who he is. You think he might be this guy. You think they got the manpower to investigate this, and they will do that. They will investigate every single tip. And as I said before, the FBI, all the great law enforcement agencies, they're not going to sleep until this guy is caught, all right? And they're on this, and they know they're in this for the long haul. Let's hope that they grab this guy today. I really hope that. Phil.
Yeah, Billy, earlier you described the heartbeat of a task force that is obviously formed at this point. The heartbeat is that the central location where all the information of the investigators gets compiled. Now, the spitballing part of it is detectives will take their knowledge and experience and they will examine what they're finding out piece by piece, and they'll make observations and they'll make determinations on how they think the investigation should go. And 99.9% of the time, everybody's in agreement. Let's go in this direction. Now, there are a lot of things that are being done peripheral to the investigation based on tips. So I'm okay with all of that. Like you said, the right tip may come in, lead us right to the perpetrator in this case. And that's obviously what we want. We want this guy taken off the street. Obviously very dangerous, could have been radicalized. We don't know what the affiliation is that he has with groups that are anti, let's say, Charlie Kirk or whatever it is that they're against, maybe his religious beliefs. So the investigators, the heartbeat of the investigation is going to be what controls the direction that they go in. And I think, Billy, you laid that out pretty good. And that's just the way that this thing should be going. And we have some probably very, very skilled investigators, and they're going to use everything in their toolbox, whatever resources they have, to try and bring this animal to justice.
Absolutely. This is from Fox again.
On the manhunt for an assassin on the run in Utah. And you see on the left of your screen, Christian, young conservative leader, husband, dad, friend, Charlie Kirk, assassinated. And now the new details are firming up to catch that killer and bring him to justice. We're getting a clearer picture of just how someone could escape that crowded scene on that college campus and simply vanish. Well, almost. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. New video shows an individual on the rooftop at Utah Valley University, where Charlie Kirk was speaking and then assassinated. State officials with more details on the man on the roof.
This subject arrived on campus, shortly away from campus. We have tracked his movements onto the campus, through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location. After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled off of the campus and into a neighborhood.
Utah Governor Spencer Cox delivered an emotional message to the entire nation in the wake of the tragic assassination.
This is a dark day for our state. It's a tragic day for our nation. And I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination. Charlie believed in the power of free speech and debate to shape ideas and to persuade people. He comes on college campuses and he debates. That is foundational to the formation of our country, to our most basic constitutional rights. And when someone takes the life of a person because of their ideas or their ideals, then that very constitutional foundation is threatened. Nothing I say can unite us as a country. Nothing I can say right now can fix what is broken. Nothing I can say can bring back Charlie Kirk. Our hearts are broken. We mourn with his wife, his children, his family, his friends. We mourn as a nation.
CB Cotton is in Orem, Utah. CB.
Hi, Harris. Well, right now, FBI agents say they have images and video of the suspect. They're not sharing any of this material with the public at this time, but instead, they're suggesting they're using all of this content to closely track the suspect.
The suspect blended in well with the college institution. We're not releasing any details right now, and we will soon. But right now, we're not. But that individual appears to be of college age. We are confident in our abilities to track that individual.
Agents say the shooter got on campus less than an hour before assassinating 31-year-old Charlie Kirk, who was visiting Utah Valley University in Orem, about an hour away from Salt Lake City. The FBI says the gunman used the building's stairwells to get up on the roof and fired that fatal shot from about 200 yards away, sending the crowd of about 3,000 people into sheer panic. The FBI special agent in charge of the Bureau's Salt Lake City office said at the news conference today that agents recovered a high-powered bolt-action rifle in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. The FBI laboratory will analyze this weapon. A young fan telling us he is still in disbelief by what he saw yesterday.
It sounded like a 4th of July popper that you can throw on the ground. I heard and everybody just started ducking. I look over at Charlie and he put his hands up like this and falls back in his chair and people catch him.
Harris, the sense I'm getting here on the ground is that investigators know a lot about who this suspect is. It's at this point a matter of figuring out where he is. Back over to you.
CB, thank you very much. Darren Porcher, former NYPD lieutenant and U.S. Army veteran, is with me now. You and I have done police specials and whatnot together, and we are very forensic. And when we take a look at something like this, I look forward to doing that with you now. So what are the forensics of what we've learned so far, and what do they tell you?
Well, there's a lot that we have to unpack. One of the first things is police were able to identify the entrance and the exit of the shooting. This is paramount because they've now captured facial images as to who the shooter may be. And when we go back to the Boston Marathon bombing, that's when we saw crowdsourcing information that was used as it relates to facial recognition. It's manifested 10 times since then, but this is paramount as it relates to how police are going to be able to identify who the shooter is. In addition to that, we're going to look for DNA evidence because the shooter laid down on that roof, and it's impossible for you to enter or exit a location without leaving a trace of DNA. It can be skin fragments, hair samples, etc. So right now, law enforcement has a lot, and you have the triangulation between federal law enforcement, state law enforcement, local law enforcement, and they're going to work in tandem in sharing this information to ensure that we bring this violent assailant into custody.
Well, law enforcement was doing what they do so well. They were looking for people known to them. That the first older gentleman I know from talking with people like Jason Chaffetz and others in Utah who have said, well, he shows up to political rallies. The guy's kind of a loudmouth, blah, blah, blah. He was already on their radar, hasn't done any harm, but that was the first person we saw picked up, that older gentleman. And so they were actively looking for perhaps people that might fit something that they were after. I don't know if it was movement, it was familiarity, I don't know. But this guy, what do you make of him and what you're learning about him?
I go back to the Charles Whitman shooting back in the 60s on the University of Texas campus, whereas he shot people from upwards of 200 yards away. And he used a bolt-action rifle, which is the same type of weapon that was recovered in this particular instance. This is someone that clearly had an understanding of how to shoot people at these distances. And bear in mind, Charles Whitman did not use a scope. He didn't use a tripod. He didn't use a bipod. This was merely the focus of using a bolt-action rifle. I was an officer in the Army, and this is something that I can do. But at the same token, it requires a level of training. So this is something that we're going to look to the background of this individual to find out what in fact his training was to accomplish such a outrageous feat in shooting one of our American heroes, that being Charlie Kirk.
What I always think, is amazing about how you and others do their jobs in terms of unpacking a moment like this at the scene is navigating all the fear and the realities on the ground of people caught in the middle between a killer and what you're trying to find, that killer. Here are some of the witnesses who were there yesterday.
It's really traumatizing. Definitely something that I've never witnessed before. I think a lot of the college students were there, even some teenagers and some kids with families.
There were people just rushing. I was doing all I could to help them out, get them out, and yeah, just bodies everywhere.
You know, it's something where you feel like you're safe on campus, and then it changed really quickly.
Right away, you know, people started lay on the ground. Everyone started praying. That was one thing that we all just instinctively did.
Amen to that. You said it would have been just so chaotic.
Chaotic is an understatement. And we go back to the assassination, the failed assassination attempt against President Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. It is a major challenge to secure an outside venue for a prior president, because just take in mind, Trump had Secret Service protection and an assailant was able to fire a shot at him. So although Charlie Kirk had security, that outside venue is very difficult to maintain a fortification. And remember, there wasn't really a high threat, because this was a welcoming environment. He's at a university in Utah, which welcomes his views. And the one thing about Charlie Kirk was this: he always encouraged discourse, but he discouraged violence. He felt that if we continue our discourse, we won't have violence. And sadly enough, we had someone that didn't adhere to that principle.
Real quickly, lay the day out for us if you can. Next steps. You've got images, so on and so forth. Just real quick, what you see coming.
I think law enforcement already has a subject, and they're actually focused on getting that person. When we look at doorbell ring cameras, DNA that will be extracted from the weapon, I just think it's a matter of time. And they're not releasing this information to the public because they don't want to scare the suspect, and I believe that they have a location in mind to address.
Darren Porcher, thank you. Always.
Say, another NYPD guy thinks exactly the way I do. He's ID'd.
Great minds think alike, Billy.
There's no doubt he's identified. The hunt is on, right? And a lot of you guys are getting overwhelmed with the evidence. Guess what? Lots of evidence, but evidence takes time to process. It doesn't, like TV, come back an hour after they send it to the lab. You know, it takes time. Another thing they may consider doing is down the road is do something called investigative genetic genealogy. Because as I said earlier, they may have his DNA, but if they submit it to CODIS and there's no hit, what does it do for you then? But if they do have usable DNA, it can tell them lots of things, and they can create a profile, an investigative genetic genealogy profile, and identify the perpetrator that way. The towel left on the scene, chances are there's DNA on it. The print, the palm print, the forearm print, all of those things could potentially identify this guy, as well as DNA on the rifle. All of those things. But guess what, guys? Let's not be immediate gratification people of this century. We have to wait. Things take time. There's no easy button like there is on TV. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, if this person isn't actively running away now and they're sheltered somewhere, they're hiding, you know, this may take time. This may take, we all want it to end today. It may take 10 days. It may take 6 months. It may take 6 weeks. But I believe they'll get them, especially if you've already got a name. The only thing I was thinking of as we're looking at all this video is I'm thinking back to the the BK killer up in Idaho, prisoner 163214. His cell phone was good because it helped convince law enforcement that they had the right guy because of the geofencing. I would hope maybe that this guy who did this to Charlie Kirk had his phone on him, just that ubiquitous phone sitting there in your pocket. That would help also with figuring out, you know, who came into that campus and who left that campus at what time. It's a lot to go through, but it's painstaking, but that would also help too.
100%. Folks, if you're a fan of Police Off the Cuff, please like, subscribe, share, and make lots of comments. That will help our channel. It helps us to grow. I'm seeing a lot of new names in the chat who I don't recognize. Therefore, you're not subscribed. So hit that subscribe button. Join the Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories family and become part of us. We're a real interesting crew of former NYPD sergeants, detectives, and we have great guests come on this show because they love to talk to the real popo down the road. Let me put Mike and Phil back on the. So, Phil, we're talking about the evidence. And again, everyone wants instant gratification. And don't get me wrong, the FBI, if anyone can do it quickly, it's the FBI. They have the resources to get this in and get it right into their lab and do the test necessary to make this identification. But guys, we know they have a picture of this dude. There he is. So right away, when I see a picture like that, I think of facial recognition, the technology, facial recognition. Also, let's get it out there to the media, to television. And I would be the first to say right now, FBI boss, put the damn video out right now. Don't wait. Put it out there right now. You want to enhance it? You want to make it look better? That can wait. Get the shitty video out right now. Someone may recognize the way he moves. We used to call it his gait, spelled G-A-I-T. His gait, the way he moves. Someone may say, that's so-and-so. I recognize the way he moves. Yet, if they see his picture, his face with the sunglasses, they may not identify this guy. But if they see him move, they see him walk, they may say, I know that dude. Or I don't know him, but he was hanging out yesterday or last week. That can also help the investigation. Phil.
Bill, I could not agree with you more. The video needs to be out there because a still photo just gives you one quick image. It could be, a millisecond, and perhaps it's not that exact. A video, however, I know of a case where a perpetrator was approaching the scene of a homicide, and he was holding a gun in his waist, and you could see he was just holding his arm against his body and just moving his other arm. So something like that might tip off a person that knows the perpetrator. And that particular person I'm talking about had a limp, and his own wife called in and said, that's my ex-husband. I could tell by the way he walks. So you're very, very correct on that, Billy. They need to get a better video out there or a better still photo. Those pictures are okay. They're not that clear, but I think that it would be key and paramount in identifying this perpetrator if he hasn't already been identified. And again, he may be on the run. So if you put the video out there, perhaps John Q. Citizen sees the video and then spots the perpetrator, and we can get him into custody and get cuffs on him before this madman hurts someone else.
Absolutely. And, Phil, I know, and I sound like a broken record. He's ID'd. I guarantee he's ID'd.
I'm with you on that.
And why they're holding it back right now, I truly don't know, because if you're worried that he's going to take off, he's going to take off anyway, whether you show his picture out there or not. He's on the run, We used to joke on the NYPD. I worked in Manhattan North. We'd say, yeah, he's fleeing. He's in the Bronx, He fled one borough over, but this guy might be a little more sophisticated than the perpetrators we had in New York City that would just take a train into the Bronx. That was how they fled. They weren't taking planes, trains, or automobiles. They were taking a train to the Bronx, D-A-B-R-O-N-X. Right, Mike? You're laughing.
That's right. That's my old stomping ground, the Bronx.
Bill, you know what could be happening too? A lot of times, if they're very hot on the trail, perhaps they're holding back on releasing that video. So they start to do follow-up. They don't get their hands on them, and then maybe they'll release a more exact photo or a video. I really call for the video. So we don't know if they're very, very close to getting him or not. I know that a press conference was scheduled for 2:45, and it's been reported on cable news that it was canceled. So perhaps there is some positive news coming out of this whole investigation. But I agree with you, Bill. If they have a good video, let's get it out there as soon as possible, because that's going to be something that's going to spark the right tip or the right phone call.
100%. This is also from Fox.
Of what the person was, who he is, or she is, long rifle, perched atop a building east on the school's library, person wearing jeans, a black vest, a black mask. That's all we know.
Law enforcement is quite frankly scrambling right now to work backwards and try to identify first how this person gained access onto that rooftop. But what they do know, and I think their biggest concern, is this was a targeted attack. The target was Charlie Kirk. This same individual had the opportunity to inflict other mass casualties, but this person chose to maintain his or her discipline. They got up, they took the shot, and then they got out of there. That indicates that there was a survey prior to yesterday where this individual had the lay of the land to understand how to get onto this rooftop and then how to very quietly escape undetected at this point. That is a very difficult task for the FBI and other law enforcement partners to work through to try to get some indication of who this person may be.
Stuart, we all want this person to be caught. What is the FBI looking for? Because all we're hearing, like Brian said, person dressed in black. That's like every person.
Well, there's a lot of information that I'm sure that the FBI has. For way of example, we don't know whether or not the shooter left the weapon behind. We don't know whether or not a shell casing, the one.
Well, we actually do know that now. So this came out before that they had got the weapon. They now have the rifle. Unknown whether they got the shell casing. It seems like since it's a bolt action gun, he may have left the shell casing inside the rifle and not have ejected it because he didn't intend to fire a second shot. He fired one shot. So there was no need to eject the spent shell. So that we don't know. We do know, though, there was a magazine and there was more rounds inside that bolt action rifle. So all of that is gold as far as evidence. So let me get back to this on Fox.
Bullet was discharged from the rifle. Was it a bolt action? If it was a bolt action, that means someone manually would have to discharge or eject that shell casing. Did they collect the shell casing? Have they sent it for fingerprint analysis or DNA analysis? Now that can be turned around in a very short period of time. That hasn't been disclosed to us with respect to the weapon, the shell casing. And of course, today, you're going to see an attempt to try to locate the bullet itself, because the bullet obviously went through Charlie Kirk. It has to end up impaled somewhere. They're going to try to locate that. They're going to try to work backwards. You're going to see them out on this venue with lasers to try to set up some sort of forensic trajectory to see exactly how this person was perched and try to then identify a profile. Was there any active threat against Charlie Kirk that, quite frankly, is not known to the public, and try to nail down if there are individuals that may be out there that they're aware of.
Stuart, give me an idea of the level of skill a sniper had to have to be able to pull off that shot.
Well, like I said, when you take a look at the altitude or the elevation of the way Charlie Kirk was seated, he had a tent over him. And so when you back up, let's say 450 feet, 500 feet, 600 feet, that shot becomes more and more difficult because you're looking down at that target. That is why I believe it wasn't quote unquote a headshot. It was taken at the upper torso because the line of sight only exposed Charlie Kirk's upper torso area or the neck area. I think if the tent wasn't concealing Charlie Kirk's head, quite frankly, you would have seen this as a headshot. There is a degree of expertise. There is no doubt in my mind this person is to some extent a professional. This was a professional hit by all accounts, especially by the fact that he had an opportunity to discharge that weapon multiple times randomly, but he chose to stay on target.
You know, Phil, we discussed that before. And when he says he's a former FBI agent, I've heard this guy speak before. He's very sharp. He knows his stuff. So I'm not going to argue with him at all. He was a street FBI guy. I'll put it that way. All right. He wasn't the back office dude that was, feeding the coffee machine. He was the real deal.
Wasn't a pencil pusher.
No, he wasn't a pencil neck geek either. Right. So he is the real deal. So when he says professional, what we had discussed earlier was he probably has a military background where he was trained to shoot this weapon or a weapon very similar to it and is quite proficient at it. Could that also be that he's a hunter or he's just a firearms aficionado that loves shooting guns. It could be. But you heard this FBI agent say it smells of heavy duty proficiency and possibly a professional background. Phil?
I agree. The proficiency is definitely there. And again, when from that distance, it's being reported it was either 100 and change or 200 yards away. You're going to want to aim for center mass if you want to take somebody out. So going for a headshot, that is a much smaller area that you're going to be aiming for. So going for the chest area, and I do agree with him. From a perch high up, you have the tent, and I said this earlier. You have the tent in the way, perhaps from the person's point of view that fired the shot, he couldn't see. Maybe he could only see the lower half of his chin, let's say, but he had a much bigger area that he can point at and zero in on with the torso area of the body. And that's how we are taught to shoot in law enforcement, also in the military. There's definite proficiency on the part of the shooter in this case, because one shot and he had the state of mind to not eject the round from the chamber of the gun, to keep the round inside the gun. So that way the shell casing, the spent shell casing, is not found on that roof. Maybe he was going to secrete the gun somewhere else, and because he may have saw a police car or something, he discarded it into the woods. He got rid of the rifle. So we don't know what the state of mind was, but he did have the state of mind to not leave that shell casing on that roof after that shot was fired. Definite proficiency on the side of the gunman.
Someone in the chat said, and I apologize, I lost the chat, that according to the ATF, the shell was kept inside the rifle. So there's gold. There's a gold piece of evidence that, for many reasons, when a magazine is loaded, you have to manually put the projectiles, the rounds, in with your hands. So unless you're wearing gloves, there's a good chance there's DNA and or fingerprints on these rounds, on these spent shells. So as I said, that spent shell left inside the rifle is a piece of gold evidence. And there's so much evidence in this case. And that's why I think, and again, it's not important what I think, but if I had to bet, I would say the perpetrator is identified. The FBI knows who it is. Why they don't release it at this point, I don't know. I think they should release it. Courtney C., thank you so much for the $4.99 super sticker. Very much appreciated. So a lot of evidence in this case. What we're really focusing on, of course, today is the investigation and how it happened, why it happened. We're not getting into the politics of it. I personally liked Charlie Kirk. I thought he was a great speaker. I thought he was very, very smart. I love the fact that he would shred PhDs publicly when they would ask him questions, try to make him look silly because he had a high school degree. And he would go head to head with a PhD and make the PhD look silly. And he did that with a lot of, just because people would get angry, they would get combative, and he would use logic and facts. And it seems like he read every book that was ever written because he could quote from unbelievable passages from books that proved his point. Professor Mike, since it's your area of expertise, I'll throw it to you.
Bill, yeah, he was a worthy adversary for any political opponent. And maybe that was the problem. Although he said, let's talk logically. If you disagree with me, come to the front. My supporters could stay behind because I want to talk to you. And he'd give people a chance at the microphone to say things. And the problem is many people saw that as intimidating. Many people saw his success as intimidating. They saw, we've heard words are violence. We hear all kinds of strange stuff. When people are telling you words are violence, it's telling you that they've given up wanting to talk to you because maybe they're losing the war of logic. And so they want to do the shout people down, disrupt people. As you said, Ben Shapiro, people like that, they get threatened all the time. If they're invited onto campuses, the campuses sometimes cancel their appearances because they're afraid. This is really sad. This is, where we're at in 2025. That's how pathetic we are as a society. And I just do want to say one thing regarding one of the previous speakers. what you had. They said, well, this is a targeted shooting and they don't think the public is in danger. To me, you've got a cold-blooded killer out on the loose. I think the public is in danger because this guy can be very dangerous if he believes that he's being cornered by the FBI or by the local police. So I think people living in that neighborhood or people in that area or in Colorado, Utah should be very, very careful because this guy is on the loose right now.
Mike, I think, I'm glad you raised that point because when you have a cold-blooded killer out, everyone's in danger. You're right. They can't just pigeonhole him and say, oh, he was just targeting one person.
Right.
He's no threat to you or your family. Oh, really?
Yeah.
He fired a firearm. He fired a high-powered rifle with 6,000 people in the courtyard. And just because he targeted, what if he did want to shoot more people? Look, people want to say things. Talking heads out there want to show how smart they are. But I disagree with them just like you, Mike. James Henry, for ATF communication, left-wing ideology inscribed on the shells and the rifle.
No surprise
James,
there.
I think there's no doubt that this was a political assassination. Someone or many people wanted Charlie Kirk silenced. They didn't like what he was saying. They didn't want him saying it anymore. They didn't like his success in rallying other people of the same ideology. But in my mind, whether you're a progressive or whether you're a conservative, no one on this earth has a right to take your life because of your ideology. Phil.
Bill, there was an MSNBC host or person that was making commentary saying that Charlie Kirk spewed hatred and hateful comments. There's nothing that is more not true than that statement right there, and he was fired for that. Charlie Kirk was a deeply religious man, obviously political in a conservative fashion, but he always encouraged communication, conversation, and he called people to the stage, and he said his moniker was, "Prove me wrong." And I think he wanted to encourage communication where two different sides, opposite sides of the fence, whether it be Democrat, Republican, or whatever it is, two people on different sides of an opinion can now come to the middle. And that's the way politics is supposed to be. So I think that that's very, very wrong. He didn't spew hate. He was a very religious man. He had definite strong views about politics. He was out there, but he encouraged young people to become part of the conversation. That, I think, was the most important thing that could go on in a political world in the United States in 2025. Young people, because they're the future of our country. So he encouraged them, no matter what side they were on, to get involved, to be part of the conversation. And that's why he went to college campuses. Unfortunately, his life was taken for his cause. And I think that that is really a shame. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, no one, and I'll say it again, no one should meet the fate that Charlie Kirk met yesterday over a religious belief or a political belief.
100%. Mike, it's that time. Your final thoughts.
I think so far the FBI and the local police are probably done a bang-up job, and we should have all the confidence in them and just pray for Charlie Kirk's soul and for his family and 2 children, and keep in mind that political violence or violence of any sort, especially for public figures, is or the advocacy of that is beyond the pale, and that we are better than that.
100%. Folks, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. People made some really outstanding comments. I like when you fill me in on things that I may not have gotten to or that has just come out, and I appreciate that. On this 24th year anniversary of 9/11, you're looking at 3 first responders on the screen right now. We carry that with us as a badge of courage throughout our lives. And it's almost, I like when you say to someone, I was a first responder, and they're really impressed with it, because not everyone is, but I like that because I take that very prideful, that I'm proud that I was a first responder. And I'm sure Phil was, and I'm sure Mike is also. Folks, we're going to continue covering this story as we get new information. But I appreciate everyone tuning in today. And again, if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, Share us, like us, share us with your friends and your family, and be reminded that we are sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe Network. Again, thank you for tuning in. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
Stay safe, everyone.
One episode just ain't enough.